What is the fastest way you've seen someone get fired? First day at work, hired by a temp agency. Me and one other guy, we put stuff in boxes and tape them shut, stack boxes on a pallet. He can't keep up, can barely use a tape gun and decides it's time for break. Goes to the lunchroom and takes a lunch. It was the boss's lunch, he stole the guy's meal his wife prepared for him. Boss man came over 15 minutes later and wants to know who ate his barbecue, sticky fingers, and barbecue on his shirt. He denies it. I just look at him and the boss and said, well, I hope it was good, man. I saw a coworker once make a big boobs gesture as our boss wife walked, our boss walking right behind her. He was packing his shit within 5 minutes. First day on the job, gave another coworker a wet willy. Shit you not. Worked at an ISP back in the 90s and had a guy working late shift. Found out quickly he wasn't answering the phone at all, but just playing video games. He was warned. Next day he walks into work with a Voodoo 2 graphics card to install in his work computer to improve the game playing. Fired before he sat down. Had a supervisor start selling away from his office, hinted at favorable treatment for anyone who would buy. Reported him to HR, and when they asked if it was true, he pulled out a catalog and tried to sell them something. Fired on the spot. A colleague let a middle school kid drive the bus. Boo bye. Had a coworker explain to our supervisor how he found this great loophole for making extra money. If a customer had exact change, he'd just pocket the cash and cancel the order on the register. The guy responsible for opening the shop on Saturday morning went out and got blitzed on Friday night. We showed up to work to find his car in the lot, but the doors locked. He didn't answer his phone. Had to call the owner in to get us inside. Guy was fast asleep, under his desk. He was gone before you could say hangover. Dude's first day, on a team next to mine, gets an assignment. As soon as the lead leaves the area, he leans over to another guy and threatens that if he doesn't do his work for him, he's going to kick his ass after work. I got up to the managers, we walked over and escorted him out. He was there all of 2 hours. On his way out, he's knocking over chairs and screaming that he'll be waiting for us in the parking lot. Fucking nuts. He showed up to work after a weekend meth bender, on a schizophrenic episode, telling us that people were after him and us, then wandering around the building with a pipe and a box cutter, getting more and more aggravated as more of us changed. Got yelled at for being late. Said some insane shit to the boss over it, got sent to talk with HR, threatened HR with his gun, then the police showed up and I never saw him again. You'll never guess what career he really wanted, but got scammed out of dot. Dude showed up to his first day after taking acid. Told the boss his acid kicked in. I worked at the head office of a well-known retailer. One day we had a temp on the reception desk and no one realized that the bottle of water on her desk was water. As the day went on, the tannoy announcements got worse, just stumbling through names and slurring. Needless to say, everyone thought this was funny, not realizing that she was bladdered and not just crap at the job. Come the end of the day though, she gets into her car and attempts to drive out of the car park, bouncing off cars and eventually coming to a halt on a grass verge. Half an hour. Working in Arby's, new girl shows up. They run her through how to work the cash register on a few dummy orders. She takes a real order or two and then it gets slow. She asks to duck out for a minute to smoke and never came back. Register ended up being $100 short that day. A guy got fired at my bar for shaving his head in the beer cooler. Why? His kids had lice. He even sang a song about how he was high and shaving on the boss man's time. There's a video too. You can see the GM staring in WTF shock in the background. Worked at a grocery store a few years ago. A new guy was hired and on the second day on the job, he was caught stealing food. He would grab items off the shelves and walk to the break room and eat them. During drop-off hours, our preschool receptionist decided she needed to have coffee ASAP. Instead of heading down to our staff room and making a pot, she decided to leave our whole school unlocked and left to go down to Big Buy Coffee. That was a big no-no. She was fired as soon as she came back. He filmed from under the door of the women's bathroom. I don't understand how it's possible to do this. First day at work for this new dude. We pick him up at 07:00 a.m. He hops into the car and goes, are we finishing work today? In beat. Can you guys buy me a pack of cigarettes? Oh, and just so you know, I only eat meat for lunch. The boss stopped the car and told him to get out. It was like 07:03. Co-worker showed up to work drunk. Was told to go home. She mouthed back and started screaming insults at the president of the company. Fired. Was caught stealing money out of the register in the first hour of him even touching the damn thing. On a related note, had another co-worker get fired for the same thing within the last 2 hours of his final shift. $50 in small bills and loose coins really brings out the worst in some people. Guy offered the boss cocaine on his second day. I watched a guy at a really high-end restaurant bring out a steam-ship round roast beef for a huge brunch celebration. He was trying to set it up and dropped it on the floor. We all saw. As did his manager. He set it right back up and started cutting. She ran his ass out of there in minutes. We had a new guy and he lasted for 2 days. Guy was writing a book about government spending and said he was being watched by the FBI. The manager said he was crazy and they got into a shouting match. Manager put up with him and let it slide. On the second day he called another co-worker a racist for not letting him do things his way when they were just trying to show him how the work is done. So he walked out. Manager was like thank God and fired his ass. New person got access to medical records system. Week 2 looked up our boss and bragged about it. Was walked out and gone the second week. Restaurant opening. His first day on the job. Smacked a server's ass and said thanks toots. I think he maybe lasted 2 hours that day maximum. I can't think of anyone else I fired faster than that. Hitting on the boss's 13-year-old son. Working security at a concert venue. Co-worker confiscated a mini bottle of Fireball that someone snuck in, and then he drank it in front of everyone. Instantly went from confiscation part of the job to stealing and also drinking on the job. I worked it in a high school. We hired a new HS tech. He came to shadow me for a few days. I told him don't fuck with money or kids and you're golden. 2 weeks later he was dating a high school senior. Fired on the spot. I used to work construction. This new guy showed up for work 2 hours late, his dealer stopped by 5 minutes later, got coke, and in under 15 minutes he was fired. Being rude to a customer in a call center just as the CEO walked by. New guy comes in and is suspiciously overzealous. Around 11 a.m. he takes everyone's lunch order and cash and just never came back. First day at work he took one look at his would-be boss and declared I won't work under a woman. So he was shown the door. At one job I had, within 10 minutes of being hired, a guy was called into the boss office. Boss held him for a bit. I can hear the boss yelling at the guy about how they discovered that he immediately started searching the internet for CP. The police show up and the guy is arrested and hauled away. Turned out he didn't want the job, just a place where he could surf the internet for free for CP. Apparently, he could beat the adult blocking software that was standard on most work networks. A co-worker came to work drunk, and when his supervisor started reprimanding him he threw up on him. I was a police instructor. I was driving down a road to deliver some stuff mid-shift and I saw headlights in the opposite lane not moving toward me. I slowed down, then noticed it was a marked unit. I stopped next to it and the officer was the middle of the road, unit in park, mouth open asleep. I worked at a movie theater as a teenager. Some suits from corporate office were at the theater doing stuff, including a really beautiful young woman in her early to mid-20s, who was in the group wearing a short jacket and a knee-length pencil skirt. We all had radios, and I was taking tickets near where the suits were hanging out talking to my boss when my radio crackled and I hear, "Holy shit, guys, did you see the ass on that chick from corporate office?" She blushed very red, my manager went very pale, and my coworker got very